Okay, everybody, this is my Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets review. Book 2, Movie 2, got a new shirt. I wish I had it for the first video because it would have been super cool to have because, you know, it just adds a little bit of spice, adds a little bit of, ooh, he's a Harry Potter fan, ooh, you know? So, getting that out of the way, this is the second film that's directed by Chris Columbus, and it's the last film that he will do as he directed these first two films, which is great. You know, I think they keep consistent with the tone that is for a younger audience. As we get to Prisoner of Azkaban and beyond, it gets a little bit darker. It goes for a more young teen, young adult audience. And those are the movies that I really love because I feel like those movies are a little more centered on their stories. These first two films have a lot of setup. There's a story within them, and the story works because these movies are good, okay? Like, they're good, but it just feels like it's kind of all over the place, and the pacing sometimes hurt, and they're extremely long, too. So, you know, I've seen these movies quite a bit, okay? So rewatching Chamber of Secrets, like, in the longest time, I was like, you know what? This is the weakest one so far. Until I make a really long Harry Potter review, that I'm going to be talking about everything about the franchise and actually re-ranking all these movies from the first times I watched them. So I could just say this now, and maybe another one's the weakest one. Who knows? But I want to say that now is because, you know, this was the one I liked a lot as a kid. But watching it now, it feels like there's a lot of setup. And there's a lot of places where it drags. And, you know, I understand that. That's what you got to do for these first couple of films. You know, it's a big, ginormous world. You're trying to make this big blockbuster franchise after these massive best-selling books that everybody loves. I mean, you know, translating books to movies is going to be really different. And I feel like these first two really try to be faithful to the books. You know, as far as I know, they tried their best, but the problem is books to movies are different, like I said. So you got to cut a lot of these stuff out. And, you know, and these elements are important, but also it just drags a whole ton. So before it makes it seem like I'm just super critical about this movie, let's talk about the things that I like. First thing is, like all the movies, I'm probably going to say this as the first compliment of these movies, is the cast. They're all excellent. I mean, you have the, you know, main cast that we follow, Harry, Hermione, and Ron. They're great. And then you have all the other side characters that are awesome as well. And their roles get bigger throughout these films, and they feel a little more prominent as we go along. And I really enjoy that they put really big names to these other actors for these, like, teacher roles and all these professors, because it makes the film more enjoyable. Because when we get into these later films, the acting is just phenomenal as these kids just get better. I mean, they're even better than the first film, in my opinion, and that just seems like a trend, which is really impressive considering they are with different directors in all these films. You know, so, you know, the different directors have to work with these kids as they go. And I mean, child actors just get better as they go in general, but it's just kind of a true testament that they get so significantly better as they go along. So that's a really good testament. Another thing is the production design. I think production design is awesome. There's a lot more CGI, I feel as though, in this film than the last one. But also, they trimmed the budget a little bit because the first film, you're setting up a lot. And there's so many places that they go throughout the film. And, you know, there's a lot of things they have to build and design. But this film kind of centers more on Hogwarts. So they trimmed it back a little bit, and that was extremely smart of them to do because they even made more money as they did with the first one, even though the first one made more money in general, but the profit was, you know, almost the same as the first. So Warner Brothers, really good job for that. There are, like I said, CGI elements that just don't look as good. They kind of look like just 3D messes, and that was just like an early thing they did in the 2000s, and you know, you just kind of forgive it. They didn't really know what they were doing entirely with CGI around that time, so it's understandable, but the rest of the film does look great. I really enjoy the directing and editing with these films. I think the first two especially, the editing is really tight, and it always feels like it's all in one building, even though they were probably shot on different locations and they're all just their own sets. I think it just looks so good throughout the films. The shots are great, and you capture all these emotions that Chris Columbus wants. So I really enjoy those aspects to the film. The cinematography is pretty interesting. I mean, it's more bright, colorful movie, and it feels like it works with this young children's kind of film and the tone of the movie. As these films get darker, I love the cinematography in those films, especially number 6. But those films are a little bit darker, and maybe I just really enjoy those more. But I feel like the cinematography fits these two films. So great job in the technical aspects for these two films. I mean, they get everything down with those aspects. I mean, the costume designs all look great. They don't look cheap. And, you know, it makes you feel more immersed into these films because everything around it looks so good. I enjoy the writing. I think there's some really funny dialogue. I think there's some really interesting conversations. I always feel like I'm indulged into this film. You know, there's so many great ways of they transition to the story, and there's some great moments and different aspects that are really creepy or interesting or funny. But what I think is a good thing and a bad thing is the Chamber of Secrets. I like the idea of the Chamber of Secrets. It's cool. It really does set up for the rest of the films, and it's able to tell its own story. But the biggest issue is, so in the beginning of the film, it seems like this big, prevalent thing that feels really serious. It like, you know, we gotta send these kids back home, or, you know, how we gotta find a way to find this place. And, you know, like, they have a hard time finding it. Just, I don't know, that's kind of hard to understand in my personal opinion. But I will say, then later in the film, it's like, yeah, it's not as bad anymore, okay? It's not as bad. We're gonna be okay. We'll do a bunch of Quidditch matches and a bunch of just school lessons, and I had a bunch of drama and stuff. That was just kind of disappointing, and it just kind of goes all over the place. There are so many little subplots that they have in the film, and the movie's even about a little bit longer than the first one, and you feel it a little bit more because it's not setting up like the first film did with all these new things that we need to learn. This film should be set up already, and this film should have been like a whole lot shorter, but it just feels so long, and it really bogs the movie down, because then when we finally get to the like top of the second act, where the climax is going, it's exciting, and there's some really awesome moments, and you learn a little bit about everything that's going on. I mean, I'm not going to say that they don't put important things with it, but I think there's just so much fat here, fat here, fat here, and I think we can just trim a lot of that stuff. Like I said, the Quidditch, they try to add important story elements to them. Like, oh, well, we're having Quidditch is because something's going to happen with this. But again, I just think the Quidditch is so pointless. I really do. I think it's really fun to watch, and I think it's cool, but they make it such a big story element, and I just don't find it that interesting, to be honest. Like, it's fun, but if you cut it out, does it really change a lot of this film? No, it's just a way for Harry to get to something after the match. I mean, that's after all these first two films do. So yeah, it's just kind of all over the place for me. And, you know, rewatching it just felt like a drag. And these other films, what I like is they kind of get to the point. And these other films do have their issues. Don't get me wrong. They do have their issues of have some fat here and things that they can kind of trim up. And some things just seems a little unnecessary. But I feel like once we get to that ending, it is pretty cool and it's really enjoyable. And this is just a fun Harry Potter film. But this isn't the one film, like, yeah, I'm going to go back to this film all the time. I mean, usually I'm just going to start with all of them and watch them through. But this isn't a Harry Potter film that I'm like, man, I'm so excited to watch. Yeah, so I really enjoy this Harry Potter film. It has all the great stuff that we've known from all these movies, but it's just messy, and it just feels overly long in so many moments of the film. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Don't crucify me over this. I think it's still a good movie. And if you really like it more than me, great. I just think the other movies in the franchise do it so much better, and they just feel more complete without the fat. So if you guys really enjoy this review, please like, share the video, please subscribe. It really helps the channel, so you guys have been amazing doing that, and I hope I can give you guys the best content possible. And as always, I'll see you guys next video.